Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be outside working in my garden all day, and last year I had quite a few requests to share more of my gardening process, so today is kind of one of the first days that we've even been able to be outside. There's actually still snow on the ground here. I live in Alberta, Canada, so I'm going to show you guys our yard. It's so confusing because it's like 19-20 degrees Celsius, so like about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and there's still snow on our ground. But it is beautiful outside. I'm so ready and so excited to be gardening and just doing some yard work. We have super long winters here, so I've just been looking forward to being outside for so long. But this is our backyard. It's a mess right now. The grass is like trying to come through. There's still leaves because these trees lose their leaves like after we get snow, so you just like can't really rake them up. It's just kind of a mess back here, but we are working on it. I would say our property is probably about 1/4 of an acre. I don't know the exact size, but this is it. We love our backyard. This is basically why we bought this house. So my garden is over here. And then we're doing like the lasagna gardening technique, kind of. So you can see my shadow. So I basically just put down a couple inches of leaves, and ideally I would have done this in the fall, but I did not. So I just threw leaves there, and then I'm gonna put like a really rich soil / compost on top. That's all I had right now. It was just leftover soil from in these containers, and it's still good. But I'm gonna do like a bulk order and order a whole bunch more compost. And then today I'm actually going to be putting in a second bed that's the same size as this, and it's gonna go like right here. So really excited to have more gardening space. But yeah, this is just so gross. I'm so ready for this to be gone. And it's just like snow mixed with ice. There's like random bags. I think garbage just kind of blows in here and we don't notice it because it's under the snow. And then our hose never got put away properly in the fall. Honestly, fall here is such a struggle because it like comes so fast and it surprises you. And if you haven't put your stuff away, it's kind of trapped there for the next like 8 months. And then our extra tires, because we have like winter tires and summer tires, they just kind of lived out here. Hi, bud. Everest, are you barking at the neighbors? Yeah, are you being a good boy or are you being a bad boy? And then I actually did start some seedlings. So I was going to completely skip seedlings this year because I just really struggle with them. They need so much light. They really do best if you have any sort of supplemental light. And I actually do have some grow lights, but I just like didn't really feel like doing the whole setup for them. So I was planning on skipping seedlings this year. Plus I just find that things grow so much better when I direct seed them straight into the garden. But I ended up planting some seedlings because we actually had a trip booked for the end of March. We were supposed to go to Cuba, and then that got canceled, and it was really sad and depressing. So I planted some seeds just to give myself like something kind of fun to do, something sort of spring-y, because it was still like minus 25 degrees Celsius here. Also, just as a disclaimer, I am by no means a professional gardener. This is like our 3rd summer in this house, our 2nd full summer. So before that I did container gardening, and I love gardening, I love plants, but I am not claiming to be a professional. This is just what I'm doing. I'm actually doing things quite differently this year than I did last year, and I'm just sharing my process, so please don't get mad at me. I'm not a professional. Yeah. So here's my seedlings. I have everything labeled on clothespins. I just used what I had. There are definitely like fancier ways to do this, but I had clothespins. Thank you. And I just wrote on them with Sharpie, but then I actually put like a layer of tape on, because in the past I've just found that these like, they end up bleeding and then you have no idea what your plants are. And I know that there are fancier ways to do this. There's things that you can buy that are waterproof, but I like to just use what I already have on hand. So I have everything labeled on those clothespins. And this is actually the best luck I've ever had with seedlings. I'm really happy with how these are doing. I actually propped them up with these like little pieces of 2x2 just like pine that were in our basement. I propped them up so that they're facing the sun a little bit more, and I think that that's made a really big difference. Every other time I've done seedlings, I find that they stretch towards the sun so much, and these actually seem to be doing really well, so that's very exciting. These little guys are zucchinis, and they started out over here and they've gotten so big already. Some of the other stuff might eventually need to be transplanted into bigger containers, but we'll see how everything's doing in a few weeks. And I actually do have this light. This is actually like a YouTube studio light that I use. It usually has like a big like white box around it, but we actually just put 2 grow lights in it, And we've been using this just to supplement when it's not so bright outside. And I think that this is also really helping, but I've only used this a few days, so it's not super necessary. This is a west-facing window that gets a lot of sun, but it definitely does help to have those extra lights. Also, because I get asked this so often, my dog does not touch our plants. He is super uninterested in our plants, which is really lucky. So I started out by just making basically a big rectangle. My preference is to use untreated cedar. So cedar is naturally non-rotting. And I don't like to use treated wood when I'm going to be planting vegetables because those chemicals that you're using to treat the wood can end up leaching into the soil, which is not good. And I'm definitely not a construction professional, so if you're looking for like a step-by-step on how to make a planter box, there's tons of videos like that on YouTube. I honestly was just winging it. And then once I had it in place, I'm using newspapers, and I've been saving my newspapers basically all winter so that I could do this. And you want to do a really thick layer of newspapers. So I was doing probably between 10 and 15 pages of newspapers, or you can also use cardboard for this. The day that I was doing this, it was so windy, it was so frustrating. I was like constantly fighting everything. So that's why I'm doing it in like smaller strips, because the leaves help to hold the newspapers down. But basically the newspapers or the cardboard are going to help suppress any weeds or the grass from growing through. And then I do a layer of leaves, and then on top I'm gonna do a layer of soil or compost. And eventually those leaves will decompose and they'll just help to feed the soil and provide lots of nutrients. So our gardens are full of soil now. We ended up picking up like a bulk load of soil. We just had a friend who has a pickup truck go pick it up. You can have soil delivered, but it was like $100 for the delivery fee. And that was significantly more than the soil actually cost. So that wasn't really worth it for us. You can see here that there's like a space open. So there's actually strawberry plants here, which are perennials. So those will come back, and I just didn't want to smother those. So once those have kind of come up a bit and are a bit fuller, I'll just like even out the soil so that it doesn't look so funny. But that's why that's like that. So I finished off this one, and I just did the cardboard and then the leaves, and then this has about 2 inches of compost on it right now. I think within about 2 to 3 weeks this will kind of compact down and be not so high, and then at that point I think we'll put another 1 to 2 inches of soil or like topsoil or compost on top of this. We'll just kind of see what it needs, and then in about a month I can start planting. I'm gonna start planting a little bit over here. I can do some frost tolerant vegetables like spinach, and I think like beets and carrots and lettuce and stuff like that, things that'll be okay, because I'm sure we'll still have another snowfall, or at least some like really cold nights. And then I also have the hose out, so I've been like wetting this really good. The compost that we just put in was really dry, And our ground is super wet, but because these are kind of raised beds, they need some extra moisture. So I've just been watering them pretty regularly, and that'll help with like the compost layers underneath. I didn't actually end up putting any of our like actual green bin compost in here yet, but I will mix that in eventually. So here's the stuff that I'm planting today. I really like West Coast seeds as well as Renee's Garden. And then these are all the things that are frost tolerant. And then I also just have some notes about like companion planting. So if you aren't familiar with that, basically certain plants like to be near other plants, and then some plants don't like to be by other ones. So honestly, all of these pretty much can be planted together. I just made like a super basic diagram. This is just like one of my garden beds, and it'll be like a third or like half of these, and then eventually I'll plant some other stuff, and then I'm going to save some room for tomatoes along the one edge because tomatoes do really well with all of these things as well. And when I'm planting my seeds, I like to do them pretty spaced apart. I don't really like to do the method where you plant them like every inch and then thin them out. I would much rather plant them at the intervals where they're supposed to be in the end, and then if any of them don't come up, then I'll go back and replant. I just find that thinning my seedlings feels so wasteful to just cut them down. I would much rather go back later and just fill those spots in. So that's all I've done so far in my garden. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you can get updates every few weeks.